From the very first moment the news broke, tensions in the Persian Gulf felt like they were standing on a knife's edge. The arrival of a powerful U.S. Navy warship immediately raised fears across the region, yet Iranian officials made it clear that such moves would not shake Iran's firm resolve or determination to defend its nation. They stressed that military pressure would not weaken Iran's will, but instead deepen instability that could spread far beyond its borders. Iranian leaders emphasized that countries throughout the region clearly understand that any insecurity resulting from rising U.S.-Iran tensions would not be limited to Iran alone. They described this danger as contagious insecurity, warning that chaos in one area could easily spread and impact neighboring states. At the same time, reports emerged that the Trump administration had outlined a list of demands that Iran would need to meet to avoid possible U.S. military action. These demands signaled that Washington still preferred negotiations even as tensions continued to rise. A spokesperson for the U.S. State Department told Iran International in late January that Washington's expectations had been officially delivered to Iranian authorities. The spokesperson described these expectations as necessary conditions for any de-escalation. Separately, Axios quoted senior American officials who confirmed that similar conditions were being discussed internally. These conditions were reportedly forming the foundation of a potential diplomatic framework, suggesting that talks were still on the table despite the aggressive posture. The U.S. State Department spokesperson stated that Iran, described as the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism, must halt its nuclear escalation, stop its ballistic missile program, and end its support for what Washington calls terrorist proxy groups. The spokesperson added that for decades the Iranian leadership had neglected the country's economy, agriculture, water systems, and electricity infrastructure. According to the statement, Iran's leadership had instead wasted the nation's wealth on proxy forces and nuclear weapons research, damaging the future of the Iranian people. On the same day, President Trump told Axios that the standoff with Iran was constantly changing and could shift very quickly. He referred to his decision to send what he called a large armada to the region. Trump claimed that Iran wanted to make a deal and asserted that Tehran had privately shown interest in talks even as both sides continued military signaling across the Persian Gulf. Trump's comments came shortly after U.S. Central Command confirmed that the USS Abraham Lincoln carrier strike group had been deployed to the Middle East. This move marked a major escalation in American naval presence. CENTCOM announced that the strike group was now active in the region as part of broader U.S. efforts to strengthen readiness amid growing tensions with Iran. However, reports indicated that Iran responded with its own show of force. Iranian military sources suggested that Tehran deployed submarines to observe and deter U.S. naval operations. Multiple regional sources reported that several Iranian submarines had entered the Strait of Hormuz to challenge the expanding American presence near Iranian waters. These included Fateh-class semi-heavy attack submarines and Ghadir-class submarines, vessels designed for stealth and short-range ambush operations. The Strait of Hormuz remains one of the most critical maritime choke points in the world. Between 20 and 21% of global seaborne oil passes through this narrow waterway. Because of this, analysts warned that the area could quickly become a flashpoint in any confrontation. Military experts suggested that Iran might combine submarine activity with coordinated missile attacks in a strategy designed to overwhelm enemy defenses using both sea- and land-based capabilities. As these military movements continued, Iranian state media released a dramatic simulation video showing a direct strike on the USS Abraham Lincoln.
The video further escalated tensions and drew international attention. It opened with drone-style footage of a large aircraft carrier sailing at sea, clearly modeled after real-world imagery. On-screen graphics identified the vessel as the USS Abraham Lincoln, closely matching reports of its deployment location near the Persian Gulf. Moments later, the video showed a hypersonic missile launching from deep within Iranian territory and racing toward the simulated target. The missile struck the carrier in a carefully staged sequence, portraying the ship splitting into two sections. The scene depicted massive destruction, with explosions spreading across the flight deck. Animated aircraft, fuel tanks, and support equipment were shown engulfed in flames, creating a powerful image meant to symbolize Iran's claimed strike capabilities and dominance. Observers noted that Iran's Navy has conducted similar drills for years. These exercises often simulate attacks on large U.S. and NATO naval platforms, particularly aircraft carriers and amphibious ships. In another symbolic act, Iran revealed a large mural depicting the destruction of an American aircraft carrier painted with the colors of the U.S. flag. This image was widely seen as a message of defiance. At the same time, Iran's foreign ministry issued a strong warning to U.S.-aligned Arab states in the region. Officials cautioned these states against supporting American carrier operations. They hinted that serious consequences could follow if hostilities expanded or if regional nations assisted U.S. military actions. Iranian officials repeated that the presence of U.S. warships would not weaken Iran's determination. They stated that Iran possesses both the will and the capability to defend itself, relying on its people and decades of experience. According to these officials, the deployment of foreign forces and the issuing of threats violate fundamental principles of international law. They accused the United States of ignoring these principles, which they said exist to protect global and regional security. Iranian representatives warned that if international law continues to be violated, the resulting insecurity would affect everyone, not just Iran. They also accused U.S. officials of committing crimes against humanity through sanctions imposed on the Iranian people. Iranian officials argued that these sanctions violate basic human rights and cause widespread suffering among civilians. They claimed that documents, testimonies, and evidence were being collected to demonstrate what they described as America's hostility toward the Iranian people. These materials, they said, would eventually be presented in competent international courts to hold American parties accountable. Iranian leaders again stressed that regional countries fully understand that insecurity tied to U.S.-Iran tensions threatens all nations. They called on countries that respect peace, international security, and international law to take a clear position against what they described as U.S. threats toward other states. Iran also criticized European governments, arguing that double standards in applying the principles of the United Nations Charter would ultimately harm Europe itself. Iranian officials warned that while such policies might protect short-term interests, the long-term consequences would eventually return to affect those who remained silent. They pointed to Europe's lack of response to issues in the region, including nuclear-related discussions, as contributing to what they described as a buildup of repeated violations of international law.